So, back again. I've kind of given up on the whole intro thing, but this time it's just a random video that I felt like making, and it's going to be about the worst period of my life, which was January to March of 2021. Now, the beginning of January, it was going fine until about the middle. The specific day was January 12th, and on that day, I got the news that my dog had died, or technically it was the family dog. And at the time, I was living with my father in Missouri instead of living with my mother or living by myself like I am now. So I was not able to be there for the dog in her last hours to comfort her, which was already screwed enough as it is, or in terms of my mentality, it already screwed my mentality enough. But at the same time, I was already failing classes because I didn't understand a lot of what was being taught. So I had to deal with that. I had to deal with the dog's death. I had to deal with raising a 3-year-old because my father, he wanted to complain that we were raising his child, but someone has to if you're sitting on your ass watching TV when you get home all day, which is also another reason that I couldn't focus everything I had on schoolwork because I had to put so much energy into raising a child that wasn't my own child but rather a sibling when there were two other adults who didn't want to do their job. It got to be incredibly stressful. All that at once, the only thing that I really had that was positive, other than my relationships with my stepsister and my little brother, were the online friendships that I had because I was still able to talk to some friends. I well, and that is what really kept me going throughout a lot of that shit. The fact that I had people that I could speak to because my father, he may have been present, but he was still absent. I was living with him, but he was never there. He always said that he would be there if I needed to talk to him, but every time that I tried, he just flipped it around and started calling me a failure, talking about how much worse he's went through. Like, I'm sorry that I don't feel comfortable talking to you about that when you constantly flip that shit around on me when I'm just looking for someone who is there for me. Like, and you're the same person who wouldn't call but once every 5 months when that, like, maybe I'd feel more comfortable talking to you if when I was a child, you maybe tried to call and speak more than every 5 fucking months to me. Like, that clearly doesn't show that you want to communicate or have a relationship with your child. And another thing, you didn't even want me in your life until I started hating my grandfather for strangling my sister because you hated my grandfather as well. Like, clearly you didn't want a relationship with your son at all. So why are you pissed that I'm not talking to you now? When you had so much time. Even when you weren't in prison, or no, not even prison, in baby bitch jail. When you weren't in baby bitch jail for drugs or petty theft, you never tried to do shit. It was never you who was trying to set up anything. My mother was always the one setting up shit with you, trying to let me and my sister spend time with you. It was all her effort, despite the fact that you were doing jack shit and didn't even want a relationship with your own fucking children. Sorry, I know this is turning into more of a rant about my father, but he's a fucking sack of shit. And speaking of my father, that leads into February because my grades were bad, of course, because I had to take care of a child and deal with the biggest wave of grief I've ever had in my life, even up to now, with more deaths occurring since then. That is easily the biggest wave of grief I've had to deal with. I went up to 2 weeks without showering because of it one time, which is absolutely awful. Like, I'm not going to say that that is something that I should let happen, because I shouldn't have. Yes, I was dealing with grief, but that's no excuse not to take care of myself. And I realize that now. But anyway, with all that shit, yeah, I understand that my father was upset about my grades because they were like in the 20s. Any parent would be. But then he wanted to turn it on my mother and bitch about the way that I was raised. So I rebutted with, I'm sorry that you weren't there for me. I'm sorry that you were always out doing drugs, which caused him to flip his shit. The one time that someone actually calls him out. And that is his reaction. I vividly remember the words, "Motherfucker, I will beat the shit out of you. I've done my time. I know I can handle it." Referring to his time in baby bitch jail. Which, also, by the way, yeah, if you want to talk about doing your time and knowing you can handle it, being in jail for petty theft and drug usage, the prisoners will treat you so much better than for child abuse, because I was 16 at the time. The prisoners will make you their bitch in 2 fucking hours. And you know that shit. And that's probably the reason why you didn't actually go for it. You wanted to intimidate me, and while you did at the time, I see now that you're just a fucking sad, pathetic excuse of a man. Seriously. Every single time you get called out for any of the shit that you've done, rightfully called out, by the way, you can never handle it. You couldn't handle being told that you had the ability to try to raise a child. You have no right to complain about how I was raised when you didn't put in the effort to raise me yourself, when you chose drugs over your own children. So yeah, I had to deal with that shit for even after that happened. My stepmother didn't think, oh shit, it would be a good idea to get him out of the house, even if he has to go back to his mother, because originally I didn't even want to go live with my father. I still loved him at the time, unlike right now, but I knew that I did not want to have another fresh start, have to go to a completely new area, because at least when I was living with my grandparents in Stockton, it was a familiar area. I had friends who were still there, so it wasn't really a new start, unlike when I moved to Arkansas for the first time, but I didn't want a new start again. However, my mother said that she thought it would be best for me because I had already had so many issues with bullying and mental health when I lived with her in Arkansas for 4th to ninth grade, which I completely understand. I'm not upset at my mother for it. We have the hindsight, yes, but I'm not going to let that blind me from the fact that she was doing it in my best interest. But everything that happened in those 3 months really just showed how much of a shit show it was. Because even after then, my stepmother never tried to help me get out of the house, so I was stuck there because I had nowhere close to go to. My mother in Arkansas, and she was wanting to come get me, but my father wouldn't let shit happen. And all my other family was in Stockton, Missouri, which was about 2.5 hours away from Blue Springs. So there's not really much that I could do when I would have had to walk there, which it fucking sucks because I was in such a shitty situation. But the one saving grace was around spring break, because right before I went to go visit my mother, I went and snuck my consoles, snuck my 2DS from the basement, my Switch from the safe, even though it was wide fucking open. My father wanted to say that I broke in. Yeah, shut the fuck up. But yeah, I snuck my Switch from the wide open safe, snuck my 2DS from the basement, snuck my laptop from their bedroom, and they never caught it. when I went to my mother's place, I had all my stuff other than my laptop's charger. And when my father found out, he wanted to accuse me of breaking into his safe that was wide the hell open because I don't fucking know how to lockpick. I don't know what the hell the code could have been. And he said that I was no longer living with him and that he disowned me, which, good. He had already been disowned by me for a long ass time. The only relation that I hold to him is through biology and my brother. The only people that gave a shit about me when I was living there were my stepsister, who I still try to keep in contact with, and my 3-year-old brother, who is now 6. Holy shit, he's grown. And it fucking sucks that I'm not able to see them anymore. But at the end of the day, I'm in a much better situation. And I'm no longer dealing with the worst time of my life, having to deal with a father who is both absent and abusive despite being in the house, the death of one of the closest things to me, failing grades because I had to focus all my energy on raising a child, and the fact that I was raising a child and being another contributor to all that stress, all that depression. It was such a fuck fest, and it was absolutely terrible all the way through. But I made it through. Even despite all that shit, I made it through. I got out of that situation eventually. I'm still here, and I am alive. And that's what's going to continue to happen. My father always wanted to say that I'm a failure. Well, I'm proving you wrong, motherfucker. Living in my own house that I bought when I was only 18. Or not bought, sorry. Living in my own house that I started paying rent on when I was only 18. Being one of the hardest working employees at my job. One of the most loved employees and coworkers. You calling me a failure? But I'm having more success now than you ever have in your entire fucking life. I have a family that loves me. I have friends who actually love me for the person who I am instead of the fact that I'm exactly like them, like you. I have it fucking great now. And if anything, I continue to prove you wrong every single fucking day about me being a failure. And really, that's the best feeling that there can be. Proving your bitch ass wrong.